Live from the SABC's Auckland Park studios, welcome to this Wednesday's edition of The Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvogo. Political party dominance has been bad for South Africa. It's taken power away from the people. Well, so believes a group of aspirant councillors who today met to form a movement they say will finally break political parties' domination of municipal councils. But how is it all going to work? We speak to one of the key people behind the initiative. But with a record of at least 480 parties registered to contest the November election, it's clear that many believe the party system is still the way to go. Most parties, however, are going into this election with their hands tied. On our panel this evening, leaders of smaller parties share their frustrations, hopes, and aspirations as they're about to begin canvassing for the November 1 election. And tonight on the show, still leaders of a handful leaders of those parties share their frustration. In our election slot, find out what happened on the campaign trail today, including how the ANC finally got off the starting blocks. That and more coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts right now. Now, one South African movement leader, Maimane, will be helping close to about 300 independent candidates across the country to contest this year's local government elections. Today, he unveiled the New Horizon movement, which brings together a group of those independent candidates. The organization plans to contest all 45 wards in embattled Emfuleni local municipality, south of Johannesburg. Natasha Piri was there.
The Emfuleni municipality, which has been put under administration since 2018, has been plagued by poor service delivery, water shortages, and spilling sewage, amongst other problems. This prompted Tasha Fenter, who's contesting Ward 1 and 15, alongside Ernest Nkopane, who's contesting Ward 34, amongst others, to contest the November polls. The pair says they've had enough of the ruling party's failed promises.
As citizens of Emfuleni, we have been disrespected enough. It is time that we take our dignity back.
The politicians in general, since 1994 to date, they've proven failure, not only in Sidibeng, all over the country.
Fenter and Nkopane form part of a cohort of independent candidates in the area under the banner of the New Horizon movement. The man at the helm of this movement, Bishop Vincent Jones, is vying for the city's top position. He is calling for a total overhaul of the current political system.
If we make a mistake on the 1st of November, we are going to pay for 4 years. We are going to pay for 4 years. So we are saying this time, let's not make a mistake. Let us stop voting with our hearts. For the first time, let's vote with our minds.
One South African movement leader, Maimane, is assisting the movement to take power back to the people. Maimane is eyeing the 2024 general election as an independent candidate, possibly relying on the broad-based movement he's helping to build. His organization is training various groups of independents and municipalities across the country on how to run for elections.
The emphasis on independence comes from the fact that these are people from the community, located close to the community, and will remain in the community. That is the classical definition of the issue. And I think that's important because at the end of the day, if you don't have a New Horizon movement as we have it, you end up in a scenario where independents have been allowed to stand in this country for the long time in local government. The difficulty is that once they've won, no one can hold them accountable. What we are saying is that we want accountability to operate locally with New Horizon Movement.
There are 911 independents who have since registered with the IEC's candidate nomination system. The hope for these independent candidates is to depoliticize local government and allow municipalities to be controlled by citizen-led organizations and competent and ethical individuals. Natasha Piri, SABC News, Emfuleni Local Municipality.
Let's welcome as our first guest a man you saw in that package, former DA leader and now head of the One South Africa movement. Mr. Maimane, thanks very much for your time this evening.
Good evening, and good evening to fellow South Africans. It's a great privilege to be with you, and it's nice to see you, Will.
Now, you're testing here something provided for in the Electoral Commission Act, whereby an organization or movement can register to participate in municipal elections without being registered as a traditional political party with political structures and so on. So, I mean, you've given this a thought because, I mean, you've had more than a year since the launch of your own movement to think about what you're going to do next, and you settled for this, particular model or project. What for you appeals the most about it?
Well, I think first and foremost, when I left the big political system, I felt that it had divorced itself away from the citizens. It created a scenario whereupon parties would come and effectively tell people who their candidate is and fail to be able to hold that candidate accountable when they fail. And so I had to ask the legitimate question, how do we fix that? And initially when we started, I wanted to work with as many independents across the country as possible. And then we realized that equally so, whilst you're working with independents and training them and capacitating them, you were losing out on the proportional representative part of the vote. So now we've built Section 15A organizations, effectively giving power back to the people, saying to the people, form an association in your town, in your municipality, and let the independent candidates fall underneath it. And what we will achieve by that is to get the vote for the candidate, to get the proportional representative part of the vote, but also if the community feels the need to remove that candidate, they have the power to do so by working with an association close by to them. And what's been exciting is that throughout the country, people have said, well, not only is it civic organizations, businesses, faith-based communities, they've all come together and said, we will form these associations, we've worked with them, and now ultimately they're saying we want to take power back to the people, which is exciting for me and strengthens democracy itself.
But how I mean, speaking of proportional representation, because, I mean, this a provision certainly, allows for that to happen. But how is the allocation, going to happen?
What you want to do is ensure that you always democratize every process. So the candidate with the most amount of votes going into an election is the candidate who will be high up on the proportional list. Because ultimately, if the community itself, the very same community that sponsored those votes, is the same community that must be willing to go, we will withdraw the candidate if the candidate stops working for us. And I think, Vuyo, this is where the power of this model works. Because previously, if you were working in a big political party and someone was doing something that was corrupt or become effectively defected to another organization, the community can't remove them because they'll always struggle. Whereas in this instance, we're saying, no, actually, you can give power back to the people. They can nominate who's on their PR list. And if the person stops working, you can remove them. It's the surest way to end state capture, to end corruption. It's the surest way to make sure that if you are able to even influence one candidate, you can't influence the entire system because the people are always in power. So in practical terms, that's how it's worked. And what we're finding is that even the caliber of candidates that are now coming onto the list are candidates that are exceptional. They are teachers, they are lawyers, there are business leaders, there are faith-based leaders, as we saw in the bishop that you interviewed there, who's a mayoral candidate, who is a skilled individual in of himself. This is a demonstration. I met a person who was in the top 20 of young leaders in the search that the public broadcaster did. This is a young person, and I'd like to invite all the young people to get behind their young people, their candidates, because it's from their communities that they are picking them. And I think this is the power behind this model. It broadens the pool of talent you present for the voters.
You're right. I mean, from looking at what the ANC has done, also the DA, we've seen these, problems where people aren't or don't get to be held to account. But what we've also seen over the past 5 years especially is how smaller parties and individuals that became kingmakers were then given positions like, they would be made an MMC or a mayor even, if you look at situations like Nelson Mandela Bay. But then they ended up, being useful proxies of the corrupt and inefficient. So, which then, proves that the system too isn't necessarily or won't necessarily be foolproof or corrupt-free or won't repeat the things we've seen, in the past.
Well, I think no system is ever foolproof in that it doesn't have its own challenges. In this particular model, though, the big advantage is, and I've worked with this, I think I can recall a time where we had to, in coalition governments, deal with some small independents. And the problem is they fear nobody. They don't always fear the community in those particular models. Whereas as the model as we've proposed it now, everybody must fear the citizens. And I find that it doesn't matter who you are. When a political party stops fearing citizens, it becomes arrogant, it becomes redundant, and it stops even delivering services, as what I saw in Mfuleni today. What I'm saying in this particular model is that now suddenly you've got a candidate who gets promoted. We must trust the intelligence of the citizens on the ground. The people know who's corrupt. They don't need the NPA to tell them that. The people know who no longer works for them. They don't need a political party to tell them that. And the people know when somebody who was living a modest life one day is now living an extravagant life. They have done the actual, lifestyle audits themselves. And therefore, if you empower them through a recall mechanism that we've written into the constitution of many of the associations, is that the recall mechanism says you can nominate to say, we want this candidate to come out because they are no longer working for the people. And democracy works like that. If you lose the confidence of the people, you do not deserve the right to serve the people. And they don't have to wait for 5 years. I'm really wanting to advance the technology to a point where we can have regular feedback permanently on a candidate, so that in the same way as we're having a conversation with leaders, you will always be having it even in between elections, so that we know at the end of the day, this candidate is not working. You don't wait 5 years. They can be removed immediately so that you can get candidates who are actually wanting to work for the people.
Now, you may well be right that, a lot of the people that are part of this, or what you're trying to create here, are talented, well-meaning, and as you've just said, all they are interested in is really serve the people. But of course, we also know that some of them may well be people who feel jilted, because, they were not, they didn't make it to their on their respective political party lists, so they are looking for opportunities to do exactly that. So how is your system going to ensure that, you are able, or it takes care of such possibilities?
I think that it emerges out of the selection process. We've had to work hard to try and improve it. It's not perfect yet. It's our first time modeling it, so there were some lessons that we took. And one of the key lessons are such that always ensure that there's integrity in the number of people who nominate a candidate, because it's in the nomination. You see, the great difficulty is that in political parties, having dealt with bigger parties, Nominations sometimes happen behind closed doors where even the community does not have sight that this is going to be ward candidate for Ward 15 in Lusikisiki or whatever the community is. So by the time the person is being submitted to the IEC, the community quite legitimately stands up and goes, oh, we are surprised that this is the person. Whereas now, what we're saying is in the nomination process, and we want to strengthen that more and more, is that people are able to send in their signatories. Because if a candidate was bad in a party, they are not going to be better because they are independent. They were bad, naturally. Whereas, and the communities know that. And I remember this experience a lot when we used to have councillors who defect from one party to the next. You ended up in a scenario where actually people would say, because local government is less ideological, it's much more about getting services done. If a person was lazy wearing black, green, and gold, they will be lazy wearing blue, lazy wearing red. It makes no difference. Whereas in this instance, what we've got to say is, get the nominations from the community, because the same nominations that remove, and communities instinctively know. Our whole mission is always to give power back to the people, and we're improving on that system more and more consistently as we get better at making sure that even at national government, one day MPs, MPLs must be nominated through the communities, and the communities must give confidence and be able to remove that confidence.
Very, very quickly, this is a conversation I'm having next is with leaders of smaller political parties who, find trouble raising funds and running effective election campaigns. You have the advantage, of having led a big political party that was actually well-resourced compared to the rest of the political parties, bar one perhaps. What is going to make these independents? How do they get around the resource issue, these independents, but also the smaller political parties?
Yeah, and I think when you nationalize anything, it gets more and more expensive. You run these big national events, national infrastructure, all of those things. That's where the big costs come in an election. Whereas for us, we found not only is the registration of the association and the candidate cheaper, it makes it possible for even a poor South African who wants to represent people because they have a wealth of knowledge but a poverty of resources, they can be able to participate. So that's the first obstacle we had to get through. Registrations are cheaper at Section 15A organizations. Secondly, because the elections are localized, they don't have to be nationalized. It means that candidate who's having to fundraise isn't fundraising in Mfuleni to pay for a campaign in Greater Letaba or wherever else it is, because that's what the national party needs. It's just for that community and just for those wards. So the cost of that campaign becomes less progressively. Thirdly, you need a national infrastructure like One South Africa movement, because there we're able to approach donor communities, businesses, and say, come and back these candidates in your community because it's in your business interest to make sure the lights are on, the water is flowing, and the streets work. So for me, when you empower at local level, lastly, people can be able to say, I will put in my 10 rands because the threshold is now less than 100,000. I'll put in my 10 rands, my 100 rands to fund this candidate. And I think ultimately that's when democracy is democratized. More people can get in. And I would hope that we could manage finances in that way and be able to raise fewer finances at the top to do the broad national training stuff, the capacitation and the accountability stuff, which then becomes less in comparison to the big parties. What we want to do is change the system. We can't just keep adding political parties because not only is there not enough money to fund the entire political project, it just becomes difficult for someone to say, I'm going to fund a party that is small in contrast to one that is big, because people are motivated by a particular interest. Whereas what I'm saying is, let's make the interest local and local issues to their cities, to their towns, and to their streets. And so that's the change we want to bring. And I want to say just in closing, that we need people to be registered in their wards and their communities. That way, we can be able to really bring local accountability to the people back themselves.
And that's where we're going to leave it. And I have to thank you for your time this evening. Maimane, who is, of course, a part of this project of getting independents to club together, pool resources together, and begin to influence the political space in bigger ways than they have ever done before. After the break, smaller political parties share their frustrations, hopes, and aspirations. Don't go away. Welcome back. By all parties' admission, financially, the November 1 election is going to be the toughest they have ever had to contest. Even tougher for smaller parties who traditionally have less access to resources anyway. The president of the Pan-Africanist Congress, Ngabayom Zikwangwa, is the deputy president of the UDM, and Grant Haskin is his ACDP counterpart. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Nyonso. How confident are you going into this election?
We are confident. We are confident that we are going to make an impact. We are confident that we are going to make a change, and we are confident that this time the PAC will get better seats than elections before.
Where do you get that confidence from?
Yes, we know that resources are a problem, but at least for a PAC, we never had resources in any election since 1994. But at least we've got African people on our side. And those are the resources that we require come 1st November 2021.
We'll get into the resources issue in a short while, but I want to know where you get this confidence from, because you've contested before, you know.
No, this confidence, I've got it from the PAC members themselves. Remember, for the past elections, almost all the elections, the PAC was approaching elections a divided party, factional party, and so on. But this time around, we are a united party. We are a party that is approaching elections, and we are all under one roof. There are no longer factions in the organization. That's where we derive this confidence, Vuyo.
Grant Haskin, how do you feel as you are about to kick off your own election campaign?
The ACDP is exceptionally confident about this election campaign. This is going to be an election like no other before it in the 27 years of our democracy. So, you know, the ACDP is perfectly positioned to be able to offer voters what other parties are not offering them on the key questions that face all South Africans right now. And so we are firmly confident in who we're putting up as candidates, and our central message to the voters is going to ring true with them.
Ngabayom Zikwangwa, where are your confidence levels?
Very high, Vuyo, because look, we are busy marshalling our forces on the ground, trying to ensure that people know exactly what is expected of them. The line of march is clear for the different provincial and regional leaders, what they need to do. Campaign work has actually begun already in earnest, and people are interacting with communities and obviously respecting in that process COVID regulations. We as a party, for instance, we know that we have been in coalition governments with first the African National Congress, and at some point the Democratic Alliance at the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. And from that, we have incredible lessons that we can share with the public. So our confidence comes from the fact that we have experienced over the past the past term of governing in one of the municipalities, but also
Okay, we seem to have a problem with Mr. Kwankwa's line there. I'm going to move on while we try and re-establish that line. Let me come back to you then, Mr. Nyonzo. The issue of resources is a big one this year. Even those that had, resources in abundance on the back of a whole host of things that have happened over the past few years are finding themselves having to do more with less. How do you hope to overcome the resources question?
We are going to overcome this question because, as I've said it before, we never had resources before. In fact, these are elections that maybe are going to be free and fair because we will go to the polls, all of us, in terms of resources with almost the same situation. Now, what is important, remember, these are local government elections, and local government elections interface directly with the people on the ground. So what is important is to get the message across to the people on the ground. What is important is to know the problems of our people. What is important is to talk to them, because we don't need a lot of resources for local government elections. You need to go to the people. So some of us who've never been given any money by anyone, who've never been funded anywhere by anyone, but we've been surviving. We see that in these elections, we are going to make an impact, because even those who have been claiming to have billions and billions on the eve of elections are coming down to our level. And they must come here, we go and talk to the people. What is important is the African people on the ground, is to address the issues of African people where they live, is to address the issues of the municipalities. Because in the local government elections, that's where the service delivery should be focusing. That's where people are. Because remember, the unemployment is in these municipalities. The corruption, rampant corruption, is in the local municipalities, these municipalities, these metros where we stay. That's where people are employed on the basis of a political party membership card. That's where people are employed on the basis of relationship with other people. That's where nepotism is the order of the day. But at least we will be there with our people who are confident, will take our message across, and will make a great impact in this coming election.
Grant Haskins, do you also feel as the ACDP that money for local government elections is not really such a big issue?
Well, no. Look, I mean, every party would love to have more financial resources. I would believe so that we can reach more people, that we can, organize our structures accordingly, so that we can pay for the big billboards that bigger parties can pay for, the advertising space on TV and social media. That would always be welcomed, I think, in every political party. We're in a position this year where we've spent a lot of our campaign money on the Ivermectin court challenge, which is meant to benefit all South Africans. Whether they want to vaccinate or not, whether they want to have access to Ivermectin or not, we've made it available. We won the court case, and that's taken a lot of our financial resources from the campaign, just so that South Africans can have the option. So, we're now in a position where we're rolling out our local government campaign with far less resources than we would have wanted to. But at the same time, we also have, all of our candidates with big vision, big hearts. We're determined to make an impact. We're excited about the campaign. We're going out into our communities with whatever we have. Sometimes that's just our regalia that we're wearing. But we're showing people that we're present. We're attentive to what their needs are, and we're also addressing those needs through the various call centers that we've had. So we've set that kind of facility up for people to call in, and so that they can raise the concerns that exist in their communities, and we've been addressing that.
I have to ask you this. I have to ask you this because I suppose it speaks to who you are. When you decided to take the little that you have and spend it on fighting the Ivermectin case. I mean, when you did your cost-benefit analysis, I mean, did you come to the conclusion that it was a prudent thing to do, the best decision that you could make, or were you fighting perhaps an ideological battle here?
No, absolutely. It was at every single cent that we've spent on that case has been well worth it. It's benefited all South Africans, whether they access it now or in the future. And, you know, we're also fighting massive media misinformation about the product itself. It is very definitely a product for human use. And there was an article in the newspaper earlier this week that spoke about it being horse paste or something for horses. That's not the case at all. You know,
you weren't incentivized by the people behind the product.
No, not at all. It's a free product. It's out there in the marketplace. It's one of the cheapest, safest, and most effective drugs in world history. The World Health Organization recommends it as an essential medicine for human use. And so we fought that battle. We've got another court battle that we're about to take on now.
I'm going to stop you there because in the interest of time. The resources issue, how big is it for you, and will it be a factor in how you canvass in this election?
Well, resources are always a factor in all elections, as some of my colleagues have already stated earlier, that ideally any political party going into an election would like to have a lot of resources, unlimited resources, so that you are able to go to as many communities as you want, and to also be able to contest as many wards as you possibly can. But reality check when it sets in, it tells you exactly that you need to prioritize areas where you know you are strong. Focus, you need to have a focused approach. So in our case, resources are going to be a challenge, but we are counting on our people, the members of the party who are contesting and those who are not contesting, to be able to pull their resources together as they've always done in the past, so that we are able to mount together a formidable campaign. And that come election day, the UDM is able to perform well. But I think one of the issues that we're focusing on, obviously, is using all the tools and the strategies that are available at our disposal. But there's one thing that you cannot do away with or wish away, is the visibility of the party in the community which we have an intention of leading them. So we'll pull resources together, continue to work. We're hoping that, obviously, the private sector is not going to continue doing what it's doing, where it focuses on a few political parties. You know, the strange thing about South Africans, they would say you're not visible. But as soon as the ANC messes up or the governing parties mess up, then they know where to find you, even though they were claiming before elections that you're not visible. So we need a private sector that can play a role that helps to support our constitutional democracy, that seeks to sort of level the playing fields. We also need to encourage people to contribute to the Multi-Party Democracy Fund, which we worked hard in Parliament to try and establish. Remember, we worked for many months trying to make sure that we create the framework that currently exists to ensure that there's some leveling of the playing field going to elections, that parties are able to tap into funding that supports our constitutional democracy, because if we don't support it, someone else will actually do it for us with a nefarious agenda, probably. So we're working hard as a party, making sure that we focus on regions, making sure that we don't stretch our resources too thinly and then in that process end up being unwise or taking unwise decisions. So we are focused. Yes, indeed, resources will be a challenge, but our people will pull their resources together and campaign for us.
Mr. Nyanso, you know, this cohort, the outgoing group of councillors, are leaving the space, according to the Auditor General, worse than they found it 5 years ago. What is it in your party's makeup that is going to, you know, change what we have currently?
Firstly, we need to train councillors. In fact, our candidates know very well that serving in the municipality means you must serve people. They know that serving in the municipalities mean you must understand the municipality that you'll be working in. Remember, the problem that we always have is the councillors that do not understand the Systems Act, the Structures Act. They don't know what it means to account. They don't know what it means to use government resources. They don't know what it means to budget, or these IDPs where we plan for the municipal wards. So the problem starts from there. It starts from the deployees, where political parties deploy people who don't even have a clue of what municipality is. And that's where the problem is. We want to have councillors that understand. We want to have councillors that can read and write, councillors that can interpret with the Municipal Systems Act, the Structures Act, councillors that can interpret the Finance Act, because that's where the problem is. Hence, the Auditor General is raising all these issues. We need municipalities that will employ people on merit, not because they belong to a particular organization. Because deploying people in the municipalities on the basis of a political affiliation lead exactly to these audit outcomes that are embarrassing, to these audit outcomes that prove to other people that as Africans, we can't govern ourselves. So all we need is to develop our people. All we need is to teach our candidates that this is how you behave in the municipality, understand the Systems Act, understand the Structures Act, understand the Finance Management Act, and then you will never go wrong if you're doing that, and employ people on merit, not because they are related to so and so. And the problem, that's where it is in these municipalities. They don't employ people on qualifications, they employ people on the basis of membership cards. And that leads to the problem in the service delivery. And our people suffer at the end of the day. We're going to work on that, because we'll teach our councillors how to behave.
Grant Haskin, you've, as the ACDP, you've had an opportunity of being part of coalitions. What were you able, to do with whatever power you had, no matter how little it may have been?
Thank you for that question. It's a very important one. We've been able to achieve quite a lot in the years that we've been in some form of executive office in a coalition. Right now, we're in office in Nelson Mandela Bay, and our councillor there is performing exceptionally well. Councillor Grootboom is an MMC for public health. He's serving the community in all sorts of ways, and he's developing our track record as we go. It started out in Cape Town in 2006 to 2009, and we've developed our track record since then. Our successes are right up there with other political parties who have been in office for many more years. We're known for being hard workers, for being honest and reliable partners in coalitions. We're known for being principled in terms of the stands that we take on policy issues. And so, right from Cape Town, right through into Joburg, City of Johannesburg, in Tshwane, and now in Nelson Mandela Bay, our track record speaks for itself. We've actually published.
I mean, as a resident, part of that part of the world, I would beg to differ. But I am interested in what you were able to, learn. What your experience really, I know that, it's election time, but I think South Africans would actually benefit from your insights. What were your experiences there? What did you find? Which then also speaks to the issue of coalitions, which many people predict is going to be our reality. What were you able to take out of your experience of the past 5 years, for example?
Well, I think a lot of consultation within parties and between parties is very necessary. Communication needs to be ongoing. We need to be preemptive in terms of the policy positions that the different parties take and the way that those translate into government policies. And sometimes there might be policy differences which we need to iron out. And a lot of the time, when it comes to local government, it equates to whether we prioritize one particular project over another, rather than there being massive ideological differences between parties. So that's always worked for us. A lot of communication between parties is important, especially with the leadership of the parties. You know, national leadership getting involved in giving direction to their councillors in office is an important factor that we've relied on, and that's given us a lot of success. And I think it's given a lot of comfort to the other parties, knowing that it's not just the MMC, for example, of one party who's ruling the roost, but it's actually the party behind the person who is propping that person up with training, with policy, direction, etc. That's always helped us, and you know, we've become known amongst the coalition partners as being trustworthy partners in government, and that I think stands us in good stead in the future.
Mr. Kwangwa, you said earlier that you could actually share your Mandela Bay experiences, where your councillor at the time, the late Mongameli Bobani, rose to become mayor. Please do share with us, and I'm sure South Africans would be keen to know how these coalitions work and what your particular experience as the UDM was in that part of our world.
Look, for your managing coalitions, you'd understand and appreciate that is very difficult, because it's managing the different interests of political parties, at times competing interests. But in the majority of instances, political parties, with the help of their leadership, are always able to find one another on issues. Yes, look, the Nelson Mandela Bay issue, at the beginning, it had many challenges. I think political parties struggled to find each other on issues. I think there were even times where, as a political party, we felt like we're not treated with the level of respect that we.
Okay, that problem with that line. Okay, continue talking, yes.
No, I'm saying, but through the intervention and the decisive leadership of the different leaders of political parties, some of those challenges were addressed. But I think one of the issues that we're able to do, one of the things that Bobani was very passionate about as a mayor, was the public health portfolio, which is now currently held by the ACDP, which then was able to create employment opportunities for the poor, I think via, at the time, the EPWP program, and making sure that in trying to serve communities and bringing service delivery to the people, but you do not just target specific or a few areas, that when you are a mayor of all the citizens of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. Yes, that time was not without its challenges, but those challenges, we've overcome them. Even now, as we speak, we have a young man, 35 years of age, Lupolo Namete, who is the acting mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. He is also the deputy executive mayor of that metro, and also the MMC for energy, which deals with the electrification program there at the metro. Always on the ground, attending to service delivery problems, making sure that he works with various stakeholders in the metro to make sure that services are indeed delivered to the people. Recently, I think they were even working with churches there, trying to make sure that they give churches as a stakeholder, or the religious community, the recognition they deserve, the infrastructure requirements they need, the services that they need to be able to render the services to their own people. So it means that you need to constantly work with your sister political parties via the structures that we have established, regular consultations about decisions that you're going to make. But what works very well when it comes to coalition governments, apart from the infighting that sometimes takes place, is that each political party ensures that the constituency they serve are able to get the services they require. Now, if you were to have a helicopter view then of the cumulative effect of all those efforts, you find that the residents of a particular city are better off, because everyone does get services at the end of the day. Unlike a situation where you have one party that is dominant, that tends to be arrogant, does not listen to political parties, or rather the residents when they require services. So it has challenges, but it needs to be perfected. And I think we must not underestimate the role that in coalition governments, whether they're at local government level, the role that political party leaders of the various political parties play in trying to make sure that they provide political direction, and that in times when there are disagreements, they serve as the appellant division where all the issues, the conflict resolution is actually undertaken at the national level.
Okay. We've run out of time, but I'm going to ask each of you or give you an opportunity to canvass. I know that your manifestos are yet to be launched or compiled even. But you've got 30 seconds, Mr. Nyonto, to tell us why people should vote for the PAC.
People must vote for the PAC because PAC is African people and African people are PAC. People must vote for the PAC because we talk directly to their needs. We talk to what they require. We talk to service delivery issues. We understand their problems. We understand what it means to be a councillor in a rural area where many people reside. So people must vote for the PAC. PAC is African people and African people are PAC.
The time is up. Grant Haskin, you've got 30 seconds.
Thank you. As far as the SDP is concerned, South Africa is at a crossroads. Amongst all of this local government service delivery issues that we face, the biggest problem that we now face, we are calling vaccine tyranny. The ACDP is the only political party in South Africa that is standing against vaccine mandates. We are making this a local government issue because soon, if doctors can stop you from coming to a treatment or a consultation...
Your time is up. Mr. Kwangwa, you've got 30 seconds.
Vote for the UDM will give you a corruption-free government, a consultative government that will listen to you and make sure that your needs are taken into account as we roll out programs. We'll do away with the deprofessionalization of the local government sector and the over-outsourcing where consultants are used for primary responsibilities of municipalities. We will make sure that services are delivered to you on time. We'll make sure that our councillors are accountable to you. We'll also make sure that our councillors understand their responsibilities, the institutional framework that governs municipalities so that they are able to deliver service to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all three of you gentlemen, Zwanele Nyonto, who is the president of the PAC, Ngabayomze Kwangwa, the deputy president of the UDM, and Grant Haskin, who is the ACDP's deputy president. Let's bring you up to speed now with what those who are already on the campaign trail have been up to today. ANC Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte hit the election campaign trail in Cape Town today, the party's first top officials to do so since last week's proclamation of the November 1 election date. Bulelani Philip went along.
This is where the lifeless body of Imtande Swartboy was discovered 2 weeks ago after he had fallen into an open drain, and it has been fitted with a lid following the tragic incident. The bereaved family says it had reported the open drain months earlier.
This drain, I had reported a lot of drains on the 26th of June directly to the city of Cape Town with my team as part of my work at the Social Justice Coalition to say that these drains are posing, health hazard, but also, a danger to young kids.
The ANC Deputy Secretary General visited the family to convey their condolences and assured them that some of the challenges will be escalated to the national leadership and cabinet. She also laid a wreath at the location of the 2-year-old's death. It was then time to hit the campaign trail, and Duarte arrived in Makaza to a silent protest of ANC members. They want a local candidate facing a crimen injuria case to be removed as a candidate.
We can't have a leader who's got a case pending. I'm pleading to the ANC to elect someone else. But now when we talked to Jessie, she told us that they closed this thing 2 weeks ago.
We now say the branch of the ANC has an opinion, but the community must decide who we want to be the councillor in the community. Otherwise, we are just bringing people that we think are popular.
The party has heard of poor service delivery in the area, with running sewers and potholes.
Kailija is currently running human feces in every street you go to, in every street. It is really unfortunate that what has happened to the Swarboy family to lose their 2-year-old.
The party says it intends to garner votes using poor service delivery as its weapon.
Here in the metro, we are sure that we are going to reduce TA from 51%. And we are gunning to make a big dent. The only challenge for the ANC and these comrades here, the foot soldiers of the ANC, is to actually take out the voters of the ANC on the day of voting.
The ANC says it will target the youth in order to win back the city of Cape Town. Ulelani Philip, SABC News, Cape Town.
At the party's headquarters, members were still protesting over the party lists they say have been manipulated.
It is going to be these comrades of the African National Congress who are going to have to lead their localities and continue doing the good work that the ANC was doing. Should they feel aggrieved or not be entirely satisfied on how processes are being handled at their level, they are welcomed to deposit evidential proof to the relevant structures of the ANC, so that if there are those in the ANC found to have flouted processes of the ANC, even beyond elections, we do and effect what we did after 2011. It is not for the first time that the ANC is having to deal with an instance such as this. When our leadership was elected after the 53rd National Conference in Mangaung, we still had to go out and deal with issues that happened in 2011.
EFF leader Julius Malema spent a part of his day meeting with Johannesburg's prospective EFF councillors.
EFF goes into win, so we've got councillors registered in every ward in Johannesburg, as we always have since our inception on the political landscape since 2014. We told South Africans that we were ready for elections. You can see that we're ready for elections. So while this was a very quick exercise that we had to do, given the deadlines with the IEC and all the confusion with the Constitutional Court, you can see that EFF can deliver whatever it takes, because we are here today. So this is one of the many meetings that our officials will be addressing with councillors across the country.
How many more municipalities, prospective councillors, will the leader of the EFF be addressing this week?
Every single municipality, our officials will be addressing councillors of every single municipality. So the CIC, for example, he will cover all the municipalities in Gauteng and in Limpopo. That's his province of deployment. And as you know, all the officials like DSG, for example, she's deployed to Northern Cape. I think she's having her meetings tomorrow. So it will be over the period before the end of next week.
And that's all we had for you this evening. To join us again tomorrow evening, 8 o'clock sharp. Have a good night.